Hi, thanks so much for joining me. I'm Danny from The Glittered Rose. For this week's episode of Two Ways Tuesday, I'm going to be sharing two different ways to use die cuts. So for this cut, I've used Altenew's Open Peony in their Craft a Flower line. The dark card, I've watercolored the paper, and the light card is ink blended. I think that both cards are quite different. The results from the ink blending and the watercolor is quite different. So if this is of any interest, please be sure to stick around. Let me know down below which is your favorite. Hit the like button and subscribe. It really helps my brand new channel grow. So jumping straight in, I want to watercolor some watercolor paper. I want it fairly gradient. I want to have it that nice watercolor look. So I'm just loosely painting some watercolors on. I'm not worrying too much about it being all even and perfect, but I do know I want a gradient. So I want one end darker than the other. And that way I will die cut the darker areas, the darker die cuts out of the darker paper. So I'm just popping on some watercolor. I'm using my fantastic Artistro watercolors. They're so cheap, I don't really care how much I use. I do have a video on them. I will link them up the top if that is of any interest. I'll also put an affiliate link for Amazon.com and Amazon.com.au if you want to grab yourself a set. They are fantastic. You know, they're so cheap and they go on so beautifully. That looks pretty nice. I'm just drying it off. I like that there's sort of light and dark areas, so I can pick where I want to die cut the petals. I'm also going to paint up some yellow and some green watercolor cardstock, and I'll dry that off. There are different methods that you could use to watercolor these die cuts. So you can do it my way by painting the paper first, or you could always die cut out of white paper and then watercolor. I think I'll end up probably watercoloring over my die cuts just to pick up the indentations with the color and maybe add a little bit more shading. I just like this way because it tends to look looser and more watercolory. I'm going to die cut all this out and I'll be back. I'll do that off camera. Okay, so everything's die cut out and I'm just going over some areas with a little bit more colour. Just as I said, just to pick up that indentation, but also to make it a little less motley. The watercolour paper has curled quite a bit, but I think I'm going to keep it like that. I think by the time that they go together, it's going to give a bit of a cupped flower. And I won't need to do any shaping or anything, so we'll see how it goes. The fantastic thing about these Altenew dies is that they have a keyhole system. So you just line up the keyholes and they go together that way. It's fantastic. I'm just going to speed through me popping this together and adding a little bit more paint, just so you can see how I put it together without sitting here for too long. I'm so happy with how the flower turned out. So now it's time for the rest of the card. For the background, on an A2 card panel, I've hot foiled using Waffle Flowers Tiny Diamonds. I've also used a Couture Creations holographic gold foil. and I think it looks lovely. I think they're going to go nicely together. I ended up using one of my Waffle Flower A2 layering dies to die cut out that diamond background. Because that plate is a little smaller than A2, I found it really difficult to line it up straight, so it wasn't straight. So by using a die, I could lay that die on, so then the dots were straight, all the diamonds were straight, and it worked perfectly. And I've just laid it up with a deep burgundy cardstock behind it, and now I'm just auditioning where to put things. Okay, so I've just placed my peony down onto my card using a bit of glue and double-sided foam tape just to pop the flower head up, and I'm just gluing in my leaves. I'm just going to glue them lightly so there's still a little bit of movement and they don't look completely stuck down. I like that look. I found a lovely sentiment that I had foiled previously. It's from the Glimmer Must Have Sentiments by Simon Hurley for Spellbinders. I love these sets that force you to glimmer or better press more than one at a time, so then you've got some in your stash. You don't have to foil something every time you want a sentiment. It's probably not hot foiled perfectly, but I think it looks quite nice. It goes well with the card and it's all done. I think it's so pretty. On to the next one. I'm going to do something a little bit different. I'm going to try a different thing for me. So I've done ink blending before, of course, but I haven't ever used oxides. I've used oxides previously in mixed media, but not in this sense. So I'm giving them a go. I only have two, and it was really lucky. I have a pink and a yellow, which I received as free gifts with purchases. And they've sort of just been sitting there. So I thought I'm going to whip them out and use them for this card. So my first impressions are they blend beautifully. Maybe I need a set of Distress Oxides to go with my other inks. I love the chalkiness of these. I think that they give a very different look. And I'm trying my hardest not to fall in love with them. So generally speaking, the largest pieces tend to go in the back and the smallest and finest are at the front. So the back pieces are usually darker. So in my mind, that's how I'm ink blending. I'm ink blending the largest pieces darker, and then the the ones that are in the forefront, lighter. I think I might speed up this because you don't need to sit and watch me ink blend. I'm really fighting with my sticky mat. I might whip that off and give that a wash later down the track because it's not sticky. I'll also ink blend the leaves using a Pink Fresh probably ink because it's a bit brighter than the Altenew. So we're all done, and my goodness, do I love how these inks have blended. So just again, you line up the keyholes. You just have them going in the same direction. And it's really quite simple. I think that this system is quite genius. Hats off to Altenew for this. I really use minimal glue when I glue these flowers down because if you use a lot, you take away a lot of the movement. They look very stiff and glued down, and I think using a little bit of glue, just enough to hold it all together, still gives it that little bit of movement. And this right here is why I absolutely love metal die cutting. The indentations and the embossing and debossing that a metal die can give is just incredible. I think for this card, I don't want anything too busy. I just want the flower to, be the highlight of the card. So I'm going to try ink blending some white cardstock, mostly because I want to put this ink through its paces and see how it compares to my other inks. Straight up, I can see it's a bit of a different learning curve than the others. I wouldn't say it's harder, it's just different. So trying to get a feel of the ink to ink blend it's different. So I'm not too worried about any blotches. I'm going to splash some water on it and run it through a 3D embossing folder so those heavy spots won't be so noticeable. I end up using Couture Creations Large Peacock Fans embossing folder, and I love this. It's so gorgeous. It has a little bit of an Art Deco vibe, which I like. So I've popped the A2 panel onto a card base, and I've popped the peony down using a square of double-sided foam, sticky foam, and I'm popping the leaves. I'll just glue them on loosely just so that they're not rigid. So I've decided I'm going to better press a glimmer plate. This was recently asked in my channel if I've ever better pressed a glimmer plate, and the answer is yes. They say you can't, but I found in my Couture Creations better press system, it works really well. It indents really beautifully. The plates come out looking fine, but if you choose to do it, don't blame me if something goes wrong because they say you shouldn't do it. But personally, I haven't had any trouble. So now I'm just going through my better press colours to work out which one would work with the card. I do love my better press colour swatches. I think they work really lovely. I will link my video to my swatches up above if that is of any interest. I'm just inking up my Curves Everyday Sentiments from Spellbinders using taffy. I'm just making sure everything's in the middle, and I'll run it through my die cut machine. I think that you can agree that the sentiment came out beautifully, even if it was a glimmer plate. The text is nice and clear. It's pressed in nicely into the watercolor paper. I think it looks really good, and the coating still looks perfect. So I'm happy to take the risk. I think there's not much of a risk. So now it's time to embellish, and for the embellishments, I'm just using some clear glass rhinestones. I think that they look really pretty. And we're all done. I'm really happy with the card. I think it's really sweet. Here's a close-up. I am really happy with it. The idea behind Two Ways Tuesdays was to show different ways that you can use items in your stash. that there's not just one way to use things that you've got. You don't need to rush out and buy, you know, brand new stuff. So if you found this video useful or helpful, please be sure to hit the like button. Leave me a comment to let me know which one's your favourite. I seriously can't pick. It depends on which card I'm looking at the time. And if you're not a subscriber, please consider subscribing. I really appreciate everyone who has. Thanks so much. Until next time, bye.